Hi everyone, it's Leslie Seabrook here from Leslie's StampinTrix. Today I wanted to show you a video on how I created a card with some colored embossing and then I watercolored it. So I'll show you the card really quickly here first. I don't know if you can pick up the color emboss here, but I'll show you how I did it. And the other thing is I have a bit of a new setup today, so I hope it's going to work out okay in terms of shadows and lighting and whatnot on my desk area here. So if you happen to be watching while I'm doing the live, I would really appreciate it if you gave me a couple comments about what you could see and what you couldn't see, because I'll adjust my setup accordingly. Anyways, let's just see if I can change the camera slightly here. Nope, not that way, this way, nope. May just have to leave it exactly like that. Hi Lisa, yeah, I'm on. Anyways, so here is the stamp set, that I'm going to be working with today. It is called Blessings of Home. And it's a new stamp set available in the January to June mini catalog. So if by chance you do not have a mini catalog yet, oh, I know what I wanted to do. I also wanted to try my headphones and see if my voice carried a little bit better. So today's a bit of an experiment video, obviously. So let me just pull my headphones out here and see if this helps. Because I find that when I used to sit down and start to craft, my voice would really soften, and I didn't think that was very helpful to you guys. So let me see if I can get this set up. All right. Thanks for your patience. Okay, hopefully that's good and you can hear me just fine. So first step here is to work with this stamp set using the Stamparatus. And I don't know if you've ever used this tool before, but it is a must-have to have in your collection. I think I was saying a few minutes ago, please let me know if you don't have a catalog yet. I know the mail has been really slow lately. So my email is leslie@stampintrix.ca. So just drop me a line if you live in Canada. I'd be happy to send you out a catalog. And for those of you that are my customers, if by chance you haven't got it, please let me know. So I just set up the Stamparatus here with my thick Whisper white cardstock. I am going to do some watercoloring today, but it's just going to be a watercolor wash. So thick basic white cardstock works okay for that. It's when you start to add more water to your paper that the actual fluid watercolor, fluid 100 watercolor paper, or the shimmery white cardstock is your best option. So we're going to cut this stamp out using the matching dies, but right now I just wanted to, sorry, I know the Stamparatus is probably picking up a bit of a glare there from the overhead light. So I just grabbed a, I don't know, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of paper and put it down to do the stamped image. Now, as you see, I'm stamping it a couple of times here just because I want to get a really clear color. And I've chosen soft Seafoam for this. I think the example that I showed you a few minutes ago was actually garden green. And so I just want to make sure that I have a nice, thick, true color laid down on the piece of paper. So there you have it. There's the stamp set, just stamped with soft Seafoam. So here's the trick that I want to show you. And actually, I'm going to turn on my embossing heat tool. So let's see how the sound comes through with that. Hopefully you're not going to hear it. So the next step is to, since you have your Stamparatus all set up, you haven't moved your paper, just clean off your stamp and then use your, oh, I'm going to have to turn that. Use your Versamark. And we're going to sprinkle on the embossing powder after. So again, You notice that it took a few tries to get a nice coating of ink down on the paper, and the same is true with the Versamark, and even more so. Actually, maybe I'll take this off and I'll lift it up and show it to you. Do you see this stamp set here, if I can get the light just right? Right in here, there's all this detail to this stamp. And it's beautiful. It's basically the center of the flower. But we want it to have embossing powder on it as well. And you'll see why in a minute. Because as I said, I'm going to do some watercoloring. And if you don't have the embossing powder on it, you will mess up your watercoloring. So all the more reason to do just a couple of attempts of using the Versamark and really making sure that it's into all those little crevices. And it doesn't matter since it's clear embossing powder. You know, if you are using gold or black, you're going to see it if you get the Versamark in spots where you shouldn't. But in this case, you won't see it. So I'm just going to pull this over, do a quick switch for you here, and sprinkle on my clear embossing powder. So this is how I usually emboss. I literally just pick up the embossing powder and sprinkle it onto the image. I do it over a lined or plain piece of paper and just dump it on, and then just tap it off. And I don't tap it a lot when I'm working with the clear. I don't need to flick it. And I'm just taking a really good look here to make sure that I've got it everywhere that I need to. Like if you were using black embossing powder, for example, you don't want the static of the paper to pick up the embossing powder on spots other than where you put your Versamark. So you might spend a little bit more time just making sure that it's sprinkled off, maybe even use like a little tiny paintbrush to get it off. But in this case, I didn't even need to use an anti-static ahead of time. So I'm just going to set this aside just so that we don't have the glare. And then I'll show you how I like to emboss. I like to do it from the underside. So if you see, here's my heat gun, and I'm just holding it underneath the image and just moving it slightly. And you can see how it's going to start to change color there and become shiny. It's pretty cool, eh? I love embossing. How many of you have tried embossing? Let me know. I sort of whipped through those beginning steps, but I'm happy to share more information on another video with other tips and tricks if that would be helpful to people. So can you see the middle parts of the flowers with the line art that's on the flower there, covered really nicely with the embossing powder? It's nice and shiny. And I'll show you why that's really important in a few minutes. You'll be able to see it. Now the other thing I found when I was experimenting with this prior to the video is if you use the Stamparatus, I don't know if you can tell, but over in this corner right here, it doesn't seem like I have as much embossing powder. So, ooh, it's hot. Since you've used the Stamparatus, you can actually go back in, line up your paper exactly where you had it in the first place. I have two particular lines that I line it up against. And again, because it's clear embossing powder, and this stamp as well kind of lends itself to it because it is an artistic stamp. It's very forgiving. You can reline it up stamp again with the Versamark, and pour more embossing powder on. Even though you've already heat set it, you can go back and do it again. It's really cool. Just noticing that this, you see how this one right here isn't really heating up very well? Oh, there it comes. I just needed to change my angle a little bit. So it just takes a couple minutes. Hi Les. Hi Lise. I'm reading comments. You're able to see it? Okay, Lisa, can you hear me okay? I said at the beginning of the video that I'm putting my headphones on so that I can talk clearly. When I bend down, I've got my head down against the table. I didn't want my voice to alter. So I put my headphones in, but I wasn't sure with the heat tool if you guys could hear me. So yeah, I think I missed getting some on here, but I'm just going to see what happens. I think I missed getting some on those ones. So then I just hit it with a little bit of heat just on the top, but I always like to emboss underneath because I find that it sort of doesn't blow the powder around. Yes, you can hear me fine. Great. Okay. So step number 2, now that you've got your image embossed, we're going to add some watercolor. So just make sure that you wipe it off and that you don't have any leftover powder or anything like that on it. And as I said, I use soft Seafoam here, so I'm going with some summery colors. I'm going to pick Flirty Flamingo and just give it a little squeeze, open it up so that I have a little palette of color. I'm going to use a little bit of Balmy Blue just because I want a bit of the area around the flower colored, and I'll show you why in a minute. And I'm going to squeeze this So Saffron for some yellow flowers. And then I'm going to go back to the soft Seafoam. So remember the trick with watercoloring, less is more. So you can always start out with less color and add more. The trick when you're using the thick Whisper White or thick basic white cardstock is that you don't add too much water to it because you don't want the paper fibers to fall apart. So I hope that my headphone cord isn't in the way there and that you can see this. I'm sort of just experimenting this whole day today, it feels like, since I've got this new little setup. Let me just move a couple things here. Move that up, see if that's more helpful. Okay, alrighty. So I'm using the water painter that we have, and you just fill it up with a little bit of water into the chamber here. And I try not to use too much water, as I said, since I'm doing the thick Whisper White. If you're working with the Fluid 100 watercolor paper or the shimmery white cardstock, you could actually put a layer of water down before you even add your color, and then you would get more and more blending. Okay, good. You can see it perfectly now. Okay, thanks, Lisa. New setup here. So I'm going to just sit down here and paint away and see if you can see it all right. I experimented just on the side of my paper here just to get the depth of color that I wanted. Make sure I didn't have too much water. And as I said, I'm cutting this out, so it doesn't really matter that I'm using the side of it as like a little palette. See how you can really play with the depth of color? Let me just move this a little bit. Oh, so many little details to figure out when you do Facebook Lives. So how many people watercolor? Have you tried? Do you like it? I love watercoloring, but I find that every card is a bit of an experiment. I'm never quite sure how it's going to turn out, which is, again, I think the reason that I love it, because it's always a little bit of a surprise what I'm going to get. The paper takes on the water and the ink differently on one project versus on another. So you see, I'm just kind of going around the edges here just because I wanted it to have a bit of a realistic look. The way this flower bouquet or swag or whatever it's called is designed or painted, it has these little openings in it. So if it was to be a realistic image, I sort of thought I wanted, sky in the background. So that's why I picked Balmy Blue. I think maybe on the other one that I showed you at the beginning with the Garden Green, I might have used Pool Party. I can't remember. Both of those blues are beautiful to give you sky and water image look. A little bit more here. I don't have my iPad set up. I should have done that so I could read people's comments as I was working, since I'm just coloring away here. So it's super snowy here today. This is our first snow day of the year. What's it like where you guys are? Okay, so next one. Put the Balmy Blue away and pull in this soft Seafoam. So I'll just pull it up. Maybe you can see it a little bit better, how I just went around the edges. So the next little trick is to do the leaves. So I like to work sort of from the outside in, but I also like to pick areas of the card that I haven't worked on, or the image that I haven't worked on before when I start to add color, and you'll see what I mean. So if I start with the leaves on the bottom here and do all of the leaves, then when I come back to do the flowers, I think I'll probably start at the bottom because it will just give it just a little bit of extra time to dry. But do you see the magic of this colored emboss, or embossing in general? It's just that I wanted the flowers to be green, so I did color embossing. But your watercolor is only going to go where you put it. It's not going to bleed into the blue here, right? So the blue is on the outside of that line created in the art, and then the green is on the inside, and it won't cross over. It won't bleed and blend together because the embossing stops that. So as I said, you could use black, gold, silver, whatever you wanted, but I wanted it to take on a really realistic look, like I wanted the leaves to be green. And the other way a lot of people watercolor is to use StaysOn. And it's beautiful too. I love StaysOn. We have StaysOn in black and in brown. So if I'm doing images with black and brown, then obviously it's quick, it's easy, and I can just reach for the StaysOn. But because I wanted this to take on a realistic look of green leaves, I needed the clear embossing over the colored ink. So I think I've got all the green that I want. So these water painters are fabulous. You just squish some water through from the barrel onto the brush, and it wipes the color off of the brush just like that. So move on to the yellow and just sort of see how it's taken up color here. So I'm just going to dab it on. Now remember, I was saying before, when we were doing the watercolor, when we were doing the embossing, to make sure that you had your clear embossing powder into these center parts of the flowers, because the artists have done the work of creating this detail. And if you don't have embossing powder on this detail of the artwork, then it's going to run. As soon as I add the yellow, it's going to blend with the green. But again, the clear heat embossing is going to keep it from running. So that's why it's really important. And you can always just, run your finger over it if you can't see as well, just to make sure that you can feel the raised image of the emboss, of the clear embossing powder. And the thing with watercoloring is just experiment. So with this embossing and watercoloring, I just put it back in the Stamparatus just to see what would happen. And as I said, it turned out fine. You just have to make sure you line up your paper back exactly where it was the first time. So I think I'm seeing these flowers okay. But again, this is such a forgiving stamp. Maybe I'll do this one yellow. Because of the design of the artwork, it's very realistic, very hand-painted look. So, it doesn't have to be perfect. Your watercoloring can take on a little look of its own. I think I like that. So, again, just squeeze the barrel of this water painter and wipe it out on a paper towel. And then I can move on to another color. Beautiful. Thank you, Lisa. So Flirty Flamingo is a really neat color. It's sort of a pinky orange, sort of moving into the Calypso Coral family. Almost has a candy look to it, a candy pink look. So if you want depths of color or intensities of color with this color called Flirty Flamingo, it's really super easy to get. I'm again laying down a light layer of color first, because that's just how I personally like to watercolor. I like to go light to dark, and I do the same with my blends, because you can always add more. It's harder to take it away. So I use that as my little rule of thumb, but everybody's different, I think. So you just have to find your own little comfort level. So I just go over the images first lightly, and then I come back and take a look and see how I want them to have different depths of color on different parts of the flower. So obviously the petal, I'm thinking the petal of this big flower here, it's fully open, it's catching the light of the sun, so it's going to be all over light. But maybe the other smaller flowers are still a little bit tighter, not quite as open in nature, and so maybe I'll make them darker. I'll see. So just to take a look at it, it's beautiful. It's pink, yellow, and green, right? But I do think that just to add a bit of interest, I'm going to grab a little bit more ink. So I went right into the color palette here, right in the center, and you see the difference right there from dark to light. Really shows you how the water just dissipates the color a little bit. So I think I'll paint on the stems, and then in the center here, I'll pick some real dark Flirty Flamingos. So this is the other thing that I love about watercoloring, is seriously, look at all those different shades of color you get from just one little ink pad. you've got lots of different color happening. So as I said, this is thick whisper white, basic white. I keep saying whisper white. My goodness, we've had basic white for over a year now. I keep saying basic whisper white. But you really can only put down a wash of color. If you start to really work at trying to blend and add more color, like add water and change your color, you'll find that the paper will start to pill. So I wanted a real white background image or color here, but you know, if you don't care, depending on the other colors that you're using on your card, maybe you would choose to use the whisper white or that shimmery white. My gosh, my brain today. Because then you can just get the colors blending a little bit more. You can apply more water, and so you see how right there it's resisting the color, because that's where the emboss powder is. So let's see, how does this look? I think I'm pretty happy with it. I think I'll just add a little bit more color here. See if I can blend those lines out a little bit without pilling the paper. You can see you can get really fussy, but I think you get the idea. And then when it dries, it might take on another look. You know, you'll see different depths of color appearing. That's what I think is so cool about this watercoloring, is that, and that you really never know until the end of your project, after it's dried, and then you come along and you look at it and you go, whoa, okay, this color is a little bit different. So there you have it. There is just the watercolor applied to the inked and embossed flower image. So I cut one out already with my stamp cut and emboss machine. And this is how this one looked. And I decided to add a few of the greenery leaves that came in the die set. So I'll show you that die set really quickly, because I think it's really neat. So the stamp set is called Blessings of Home. The die set is called Flowers of Home. I think it's Blessings of Home bundle. So look at the different dies that you get in here. Here is the one that was the leaves, and it's still got a piece of soft seafoam in it. And then there's all these little pieces here. I don't know if you can see them, because again, I'm trying to get my camera straight, figure out where I'm working from. Yeah, it's probably better if I do that. So I use this big image here to just cut out the flower. Oops. And then I taped a couple of our smaller images, or smaller die cut shapes out of the soft seafoam. I just taped them on the back, and then I'll put it onto the card. So I just wanted to show you this trick today of working with the ink, colored ink, and then embossing it and watercoloring it. So the rest of the card I'll just pull together really quickly. This piece of soft seafoam, I decided to run it through our Timber 3D embossing folder, and then I put a little layer of craft white ink on it from, it's called Whisper White Craft Ink, I think, with our blending brushes. So I don't know if you can see, it takes on just a slightly different shade with this addition of white, but it looks really neat in live. And then I just distress the edges. So I grab an old pair of scissors and I literally just distress the edges. I also crinkled the paper up a little bit. And again, I did it with this card just because I was thinking it's sort of artistic, looking image, wood background. So I literally just kind of bent the card a little bit and broke up the fibers just a titch. Now where is my glue? Oh, there it is. You gotta go over and grab it. Didn't have it on the table, sorry about that. So I'm just gonna add some of our glue to the back. I like to get a fairly liberal amount when I use an embossing folder, just because I want it to adhere really nicely. And remember, you can always push this glue around once it's down. So if you put a large amount of glue right by the edge, you might have it seeping out. But if you put it in other places, then you can just move it around and squish it. And like I said, I kind of wanted the edges to pull up a little bit, and I think I did get a little bit too much glue there on that edge. Always have a wet paper towel, or in this case I have my chamois. Love the holder as your provider. Yes, Lisa, you're actually getting that as a gift from me. Yes, so I should say that. Awesome holder, eh? Do you love this? So my husband made this for me as a birthday present. So he did it with his 3D printer. And so if you're a member of the StampinTrixers team, so if you choose to join Stamping Up, then with me, then you're a member of my team, then you'll get one of these for free. And then the next thing, sorry, I was just wanting to move on as I was talking. I'm just going to add this. Again, I think I'm going to glue it just because I want to put the sentiment up on dimensionals. So the one thing about this, though, is that when it's fresh and new, you have a fresh new bit of glue, bottle of glue, it does come out super fast because you're holding it upside down. But I cannot believe how awesome it is. I can have, 4 glues on the go, glues that I think are completely done, but I leave them turned upside down in this holder, and I get so much more glue out of it. They last and last and last. I love our multi-purpose liquid glue. So another trick that you can do is, if you have your clear block, just lay your clear block on there for a minute just to make sure you get good adhesion, because the embossing folders, of course, because they have some texture to them, really need the glue to kind of hold the images in and hold it down to within all those layers that have been embossed and raised. So I'm just wondering, I might put a little bit more glue down inside there because I have a feeling that that is going to come off. So just hold that down. And especially because you've got a layer of craft ink on it, just really want there to be good adhesion of glue. And to go through the mail, I wanted it to be, I didn't want it to be too thick. So the sentiment is going to be popped up on dimensional. So I didn't want the whole card to be too thick. So I also embossed the sentiment. I think this set has really awesome sentiments. It's got, I'll pull it back in here. Thank you for inspiring me. Have a perfect birthday. We can get through anything together. What a beautiful day for love. And you are a real blessing to everyone around you. So beautiful sentiments within this stamp set. So when I did this colored embossing for the sentiments, I did a whole, I'm just reaching around you here, I did a whole line of them just on my Stamparatus. I just put a piece of cardstock down and laid each one down and just did them all at the same time. So that's just a little trick to to make it efficient for you, emboss them all at the same time, and then just keep them in your case. And then you have them when you need them. And you could do 2 or 3 different colors. That would be awesome. And then I just used our tape runner along the sentiment layer here first, and then just squished on some, looped on some white and gold twine, and then I added the Stampin' Dimensionals. So that's what I mean. In the end, the card will have a fair bit of height to it going through the mail, because you have these little layers popped up just because of the distressing. So that's the other reason I just wanted to glue everything down so that I could pop this layer up. And then you can just, you know, trim these as you wish. I think I might trim that white one, it's a little bit long, but I kind of like the longer trim lately. Sometimes it just gets caught in the envelope though. So there you have it. Just a super neat technique, I think. It works perfectly with a stamp set like this, where you want your leaves to have that really realistic look, and you want them to be green. And as you see, when it's cut out using the die, you do see a little bit of the white edge, and so that's why I colored it with, you could use green, your soft seafoam, there you see it a little bit better, or as I did, I put some of the balmy blue. So that's it. There's the card for today, and please leave me a comment if this video was helpful. If you would like to see other videos in relation to watercoloring and tips and tricks. I wanted to show you one more little card that I made. This was with the other image within the Blessings of Home stamp set. So here it is here. It's just this little one. That overhead light is a bit of a pain, isn't it? Anyways, this one, I just used yellow and green. The image itself is embossed with garden green, so it takes on a bit of a different look, but I knew I wanted to use this paper, the Blessings of Home paper. So I think it's maybe Home Sweet Home Sweet. I should look that up. Should have looked that up before I got on. Anyways, and you can see a little bit more of the balmy blue here on this one. And then I decided to use soft seafoam for the sentiment. This is from our Ornate Layers dies. And then this background, as I said, it's the paper, but then I sent it through the embossing folder too. So I don't know if you can really tell, but there is a fair bit of texture to that. So that's another card made with the same technique, just different colors of ink. And so then this is the first card that I made, and I'll pull these up two together. So you can see this is using the garden green ink versus this is using the soft seafoam ink. So let me know, which do you prefer? I always like hearing what everybody's preferences are when it comes to the cards that I make. So thanks so much. I should tell you again, let me just slide these out of the way. If you do place an order this month in January and you use this host code, then I can send you a little thank you in the mail, a little thank you gift in the mail the following month. And you can shop at my Stampin' Up! Online store. And certainly send me an email at leslie@StampinTrix. And as always, you can visit my blog, www.stampintrix.ca, for any additional information about the cards, other tips and tricks and little tutorials. You can sign up for my newsletter there. And yeah, I think that's it. That's what I have for you today. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope wherever you are, you're safe and warm. Take care. Thank you. Have a super day. Bye-bye.